Hey, welcome to this video on tuples. So in this video we'll discuss what tuples are and how you can use them in Python. So let's get started with looking at tuples. Tuples are very similar to lists, however they have one key difference, and that is the immutability. So list and tuples are the same things. You can store any type of data in both of them. You can work with them, you can apply different type of functions, but the only difference between a list and a tuple is that the list can be mutated while the tuple can't. So what that means is once an element is inside a tuple, it cannot be reassigned. So tuple and the second difference between a list and a tuple is that tuple uses parentheses while the list uses square brackets. So let's get started by exploring everything in Jupyter Notebook. If you are willing to create a tuple, you will just write the name of the tuple and then parentheses, and inside that parentheses you can just assign some gibberish values. And if you're willing to show those values out, you just write the name of the tuple and it will show you the contents of the tuple. If you're willing to create a list, you would just write my list and or any name you want to give your list and just assign a bunch of gibberish values, something like that. And if you're willing to print out the list, you will just write the name of the list and press Shift and Enter in Jupyter Notebook and it will show you the list. One thing else, if you are not following along the entire course, I would highly recommend, because it's really informative and we are really doing a great stuff inside this course. So just a note, if you're not willing to follow the entire course, you can just follow the list video because it's related to this video. So in order to fully understand what tuples and lists are, you should follow that video as well. I will link it down in the description, the course and the list video as well, so you can find it out and follow it. Anyway, continuing with our video, if you're willing to find the type, you can just do that by writing type and then passing through either the tuple or the list. You can see that once I forwarded the tuple to the type, it returned, or it showed me that it is a tuple. We can do the same thing with the list, and that would be my list. Press Shift and Enter, you will see that it's a list. Anyway, moving forward towards some more function. If you're willing to find the length of the tuple, you can do that by writing len and just pass the list. You would see that it will provide you the length of the list. Now, in our previous video, we did discuss how you can use the indexing and reverse indexing with list. You can do the same thing with the tuple as well. You can just write the name of the list and pass in the key, and it will show you the value associated with that key. So this is known as indexing. And if you're willing to, suppose I echoed out this first element in the list, which was 2. If you're willing to echo out the first the 0th element, you can just pass in the 0 key. Do note that the keys or the indexes in a list or a tuple starts with a 0 and it ends with whatever the number is. Like suppose if you have 3 elements in a list, so the number would end with 3 minus 1, which is 2, second index. It's because it starts with the 0. Anyway, the reverse indexing also works with the tuple, and that is the reverse indexing is you pass with values something negative. So if you pass in -1, it will return 3 because 3 is the last element. If you come over here, so the reverse the normal indexing starts from here, so it's the 0th element is the first and it's the second element, and the reverse indexing starts from the end, so it's -1, -2, and -1, -2, and -3. So if I print out the -1, you would see that it will print out the 3, and if I print out -2, as explained, it will print out the the 2 value. Okay, so you can also perform different type of functions on tuple and the tuple has just two functions. The first one is the count and the second one is the index. The index is used to find out the index of certain element, like where it's placed in a list, and the count is basically counting the number of times an element came in a tuple. So in order to make you fully understand how they works, I will just change the content of the list a little bit, and let's make it A, and B. Once I press shift and enter, suppose I'm willing to find out how many times A came in a tuple T. So what I will do, I will write t.count, t.tab and count, and press shift and enter. And indeed we need to provide which element I want to find out. So that would be A, and if I press shift and enter, you would see that the A came 2 times. If we do the same thing with B, you would see that it will print out the B came once. You can also find out the index of certain element. Like suppose I want to find where the B is placed in a tuple. So what I will do, I will write t.index, and inside the parentheses I will pass B, and press shift and enter. You would see that B is at second place. So these are the functions that you can perform. That literally with list you can do anything. You can sort them, you can do whatever you want, but with tuples you just have to work with these two functions, which is count and which is index. One more thing to note is the difference between the list and the tuple. So the difference between a tuple and a list is that if I so we have my list. Let's print out the contents of my list. So in my list I have 1, 2, 3. Suppose I want to change this one. Instead of this one, I want to put a string one. So what I will do, I will write my list, and to that list at 0th element I will just pass in some data as 1, and you will see that it will the data got changed. And if I now print out the list, you would see that instead of 1 integer, we have string 1. But you cannot do this in with tuple. Suppose I come over here and I want to change the 0th element and assign 1 the way we did with the list. So it won't do that because it will throw an error, type error. You can tuple object does not support the item assignments, and this is the difference between a list and a tuple. So you would say that there are a lot of different limitations with tuple. Why do we even need a tuple? Well, right now, as you are learning along the Python, you won't need the tuple that much. But when you become a mature programmer and when you go a little bit forward in the programming field, then there you would need tuple in areas where you would work with a lot of data and a lot of transferring data from one object to another, transferring data from database to your objects and stuff like that. So there you will need some integrity in order not to change the data in between the transformation or something like that. So there you would need these tuples in order to make sure or guarantee the integrity of the data. So this is pretty much it for this video, in which we just wanted to discuss what tuples are. If you're willing to create a tuple, what tuples are? Well, tuples are basically the same thing as lists with certain type of limitations of immutability, and that's it. So if you're willing to create a list, you can do that. If you're willing to create a tuple, you can do that by writing the name of the tuple and assigning it some content. If you're willing to create a list, you can do that right over here. If you're willing to check the type of tuple, you can do that by writing type and passing in the tuple. If you're willing to find the length, you can do that right over here. If you're willing to get something with an index or a reverse index, you can do that right over here. And also you can perform the count and the index function on it as well. So this is pretty much it for this video. I hope you have learned whatever I wanted to show you. So till next time, enjoy hacking or programming, whatever you are doing. Stay cheeky breaky. Peace out.